everyone, welcome back. In this video, we will be discussing significant figures and calculations. We will be using a calculator throughout this video, so please make sure to have one handy. And as always, when you're working through calculations, your calculator is going to give you a big number in most cases. And so the learning goal for this video is to learn how to adjust calculated answers to give the correct number of significant figures. Rules for rounding off. If the first digit to be dropped is 4 or less, then it and all the following digits are dropped from that number. So for example, if the calculator gave us 8.4234 as the answer, and we needed to round it to 3 significant figures, then I like to underline the third significant figure and see what's next to it. Since it is the number 3 and 3 is less than 4, then we will keep that number the same. So we will not round up for that 2, and we will just simply drop 3, 4. If we had to round to 2 significant figures, then the number next to the 4 is 2, which is less than 4. So you keep 4 the same, keep it as is, and then you drop the rest of the numbers. If the first digit to be dropped is 5 or greater, then the last retained digit of the number is increased by 1. So in this example of 14.780, if we were to round it to 3 significant figures, so in this case to the 10th place, then the number next to it is 8. 8 is greater than 4, so we round up the 7 to 8, and so we will report 14.8 and then drop the 80 at the end. Now in this case here, 3,256, if we wanted to round to 3 significant figures, then the number here increases by 1 because the 6 is 4 or greater, but you can't simply just drop the 6. If you wrote, for example, 326, that does not convey the order of magnitude of 3,256. And so we have to put a 0 in there to indicate the order of magnitude, that it's 3,260. Another way to imply magnitude is also to write it in scientific notation. But like I said, in this example here, we're putting a 0 as a placeholder to replace the drop digits. Rounding off is a key math skill. From here on out, you will be rounding your answers that you get from your calculator. So let me know if you have any questions regarding rounding off answers. Let's do a study check. Pause the video, try this out yourself, and then come back to check your work with me. All right, so we are asked to write the correct value when 3.1457 grams is rounded to each of the following. 3 significant figures. So I will count 1, 2, 3. So it looks like if I wanted to report it to the hundredths place, that would give me 3 significant figures. I look directly at what's next to it. The number that's next to it that I will drop is 5 or greater. So what do I do with that 4? Good, I round it up. So then it turns into 3.15 grams. And then I drop the 5, 7 at the end. No need for placeholders here. this is the correct order of magnitude. So 3.1457 is very similar to 3.15 grams. If I wanted to report this answer to two significant figures, let's write the original value from our calculator. And two significant figures means I would round to the 10th place. The number immediately next to the 10th place is a 4. Anything that's 4 or less, we keep the retained digit the same, so no rounding up. So your answer would be reported to 3.1 grams if you were reporting to two significant figures. In multiplication or division, the final answer is written so that it has the same number of significant figures as the measurement with the fewest significant figures. Okay, so when you're dealing with multiplication or division, you're looking for the fewest number of significant figures. So for example, if I were to calculate 24.66 centimeters times 0.35 centimeters, that would give me 8.631 on my calculator. But because this is multiplication, I need to report it to the fewest number of significant figures. So what I do is I go back to my measured values and I count the number of sig figs. This one has 4 significant figures, and this one has 2 significant figures. And so the fewest number of significant figures is 2. And so I would need to report it to the 10th place, because that would give me 2 significant figures. The number next to the digit I will retain is 3. 3 is 4 or less, which means that this number stays the same, and I can drop everything else. So this turns to be 8.6. You also need to take into account units. Your calculator won't display units, so you'll need to include units from the given data. So centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. Throughout our calculations in this course, we will use significant figures. So this is a core chemistry skill. Let's have some practice with it. Once again, pause the video, try this example on your own with a calculator, report to the correct number of significant figures, and then check your work with me. All right, welcome back. So what we're going to do here, and I have my calculator, so I'm going to talk you through this. In my calculator, I oftentimes like to include parentheses, just to make sure that I follow the correct orders of operation and that I do not have a calculator error. So in my calculator, I put parentheses 21.5 times 0.30 end parentheses, and then I divide by 1.88. And on my calculator, I get this long answer, 3.430851064. Now, it's only multiplication and division here. So I report my final answer to the fewest significant figures, since everything is multiplication and division. And so with a different colored pen, I determine the number of significant figures in each value. So this one has 3 significant figures. How much does 0.30 have? Good, this has 2 significant figures. And what about 1.88? Yes, it also has 3 significant figures. So how did you round your value to how many significant figures? Good, yes, this has got 2 significant figures, so we will round to the 10th place here because that will give us 2 significant figures. And we notice here that the number that immediately next to that 4 is a 3 that we will drop. And so that indicates that we do not round up, we keep the 4 the same. So we would report 3.4. And what would the units be? Excellent. So we can see that centimeters cancels out. So the final units are in centimeters. So the final answer is 3.4 centimeters. When you're doing calculations, make sure you save rounding until the very end of the calculation. If we were to have round at the top here and then divided the rounded answer by 1.88, we would introduce error in the calculation. So save rounding until the end of the calculation. And that is because we want to avoid rounding error. So we saw in an earlier example, we needed to add a significant 0. When the calculator display contains fewer significant figures than needed, add 1 or more significant zeros to obtain the correct number of significant figures. So for example, if you multiply and divide the following number, actually just divide in this case here, your calculator would display 3. And that's not indicating the correct number of significant figures. Because how many significant figures is in 6.0? 2 significant figures. And what about the measurement 2.00 grams? 3 significant figures. So our final answer needs to be in how many significant figures? Good, and 2. So therefore, we would need to add a 0 to indicate 2 significant figures. Now, adding this 0 was different than that previous example I was referring to when we added zeros as placeholders. But once again, this is just another example of where we need to add zeros to our final answer. In this case, because we want to indicate the correct number of significant figures. Pause the video and do the study check on your own, and then come back and check your work with me. All right, so we are asked to perform the following calculation of measured numbers. Give the answer in the correct number of significant figures. So once again, I like to put parentheses around separate calculations here. So up top in the numerator, I am going to do parentheses 5.00 times 3.408 end parentheses. And then I'm going to divide by 2.0. And my calculator shows 8.52. And I can see that the units will be in centimeters just because 2 of the centimeters cancel out. But how many significant figures should I report this value to? Let's go through and identify the number of significant figures. So this one has 3. This answer or this value has 4, and this one has 2. So in multiplication, we report to the fewest number of sig figs. And so this answer should be reported to 2 significant figures. The number we're dropping is 2, which is 4 or less, meaning that the 5 does not go up. It stays the same. And so our final answer is 8.5 centimeters. The rules for addition and subtraction are different than the rules for multiplication and division. The final answer is written so that it has the same number of decimal places as the measurement with the fewest decimal places. So it's different for addition and subtraction. So for example, if we had 2.012 plus 61.09 plus 3.0, we can see that the first measured value goes to the thousandths place. The second measurement goes to the hundredths place. And the third measurement goes to the tenths place. The third value is the one with the fewest decimal places, so the tenths place. When we add everything together, our calculator will display 66.102. And so we will need to round to the fewest decimal places, so the tenths place, and use the same rules for rounding. The number next to the 1 is 0, so we will retain the 1, we will not round up, and we will drop the rest. So the final answer here is 66.1. So once again, the rules for addition and subtraction are different than the rules for multiplication and division. For addition subtraction, we report the final answer to the fewest decimal places. All right, pause the video, try this example on your own first, and then check your work with me. All right, so the first measured value is 65.09. And we can see that it goes to the hundredths place. The second measured value is 3.0. We can see it goes to the tenths place. And so the tenths place is the fewest decimal places, and that's what we will report our final answer to. When I do this calculation on my calculator, I get 62.09. And I remind myself that I need to report that final answer to the tenths place because that's the fewest decimal places out of my measured values. And because the number next to it is 9, which is 5 or greater, that means we do round up the retaining number by 1. And so the final answer is 62.1. Once again, pause the video, try the study check on your own, and then come back and check your work with me. All right, so we're doing addition, which means we need to report the answer to the fewest decimal places. So let's look at that. We can see that this measurement is to the thousandths place. And that this measurement is to the tenths place. And so we will report our final answer to the tenths place. When I plug this into my calculator, I get 104.4 409 milligrams, but I need to report it to the 10th place. So I'm going to underline that number here. Look right next to it, it's a 0, which means we do not need to round up. And so the final answer will be 104.4 milligrams. Once again, reporting this answer to the fewest decimal places because it is addition. Now, when you're adding the units, because you're adding the same units, it stays the same here. It's not like when we multiplied centimeters times centimeters and got centimeters squared in a previous example problem in this video. All right, thank you for watching. And as always, email me with any questions.